Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Rage Berserker Cleave League Start guide. I never thought I would say those words. Now, I want to make it clear this is not a beginner build guide. If you haven't really played Melee before in Path of Exile, and especially if you haven't played Path of Exile, this is probably not the build for you. That being said, let me step through the path of building here. I'll go as fast as possible. I'm going to explain all the major details of what makes this build work. First of all, the new skill gem. This is coming with the Affliction patch. This is one of the transfigured gems, Cleave of Rage. The important line here is gain 2 rage if this skill hits any enemies. The interesting part about this line is that, number 1, it does not specify about repeated hits. Number 2, it does not specify a cooldown period. What this means, or at least by reading this line, the way it's worded, is that every time you hit something, doesn't matter how many things you hit, if you hit something, you're getting 2 rage, period. Obviously with Cleave. As long as you're cleaving one target, you get 2 rage every time you hit. That includes, if you're using multi-strike, every single repeat. So this means you're going to generate a lot of rage. The faster you attack, the more rage you generate, assuming there is no internal cooldown period here. Also, you have to use both an axe and a sword. Cleave normally just requires you to dual wield either 2 axes, 2 swords, or 1 of each. This one, you have to use an axe and a sword. You can't do 2 axe, 2 sword. Also, it gets way bigger the more rage you have. All this means is that you're stacking rage. Pretty simple, right? So we're going to Berserker, obviously, so you get rage on hit and you get plus 10 to maximum rage. I'm also getting maximum rage from this node right here. Slaughter is plus 5. Berserking is another plus 10. And then we are using a couple of uniques here. Don't worry, I know you're rolling around like, oh, uniques in a League Start guide. Nice League Start, bro. This is definitely a 1C unique. There's no way this thing is going to be more expensive than like maybe 3 chaos at League Start. This thing is super cheap. Rigwald Savagery. It's not a very rare drop to get. Plus 25 maximum rage, and you get a little bit of extra physical damage while you're dual wielding. This thing is going to be disgusting for the price point. Now, you can upgrade with a Psychotic Axe later on, which is a heist base type, but I wouldn't even bother using that right now. Don't even worry about that. Just use this thing. It's going to be amazing for the plus 25 max rage alone. And speaking of max rage, it's a very, 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 very important stat because of how well the stat scales with both, the actual benefits of rage, but also being able to keep berserk uptime, etc. So the Bear's Girdle is by far the best in slot belt. You see, if I take this off, we lose like 40% damage. This might be a little expensive on League Start. You can target farm it pretty easily if you just spec into Harvest. And do some shenanigans with getting the higher tier plants. This is not a super rare drop whatsoever, but maybe in the first couple days, this will be like 5, maybe 10 chaos. I don't think it's going to be that expensive though, but those are the only 2 uniques. You don't even need them, honestly. It just gives you a ton of damage. Like I said, take off the belt, lose like 40% damage. So definitely save up for this belt. If it is like 5 or 10 chaos, I know that's a bit intimidating to some players out there. Don't worry about it. Just save up. Once you can buy this belt, get it. Otherwise, just do like a random rare belt. Speaking of which, all these jewels is just like life and impale chance. Those are super easy to get. You can re-roll 1 click and harvest and get that mod pretty much. I am using a cluster jewel, but this is literally just for the 1 rage on hit. You don't need any other stats from this thing. That's also a pretty easy cluster jewel. You can get this very cheap. You can roll this very easily yourself. It's not very hard to roll. So that's just for rage generation. We have rage generation from this mastery as well, which is 1 every second. We have rage generation from playing Berserker. We have rage generation from the rage support gem. We have rage generation from the Cleave skill gem. And we have rage generation on our gloves from the Eldritch Implicit. You definitely don't need all of this rage generation, just the more the merrier. Speaking of which, to utilize all of your rage, you're going to use Rage Vortex. Essentially, think of this like a totem or a spell in a way, where you're just going to cast Rage Vortex when you find a pretty tanky enemy. It's just going to tick on the enemy, and then once it runs out, you just cast it again. You don't need to use this while you're mapping or anything. It's not, don't worry, this is like a 2-button build in total. So just cast it whenever it's up. You should be max rage and berserking most of the time because of how much rage you're generating. So I also have berserk enabled here. You can see obviously you're going to get a lot of damage from this, but I really do think just of obviously I need to play this build to see how it's going to work, but I really think because of how the Cleave skill gem is worded, again, 2 rage if it hits any enemies, you're going to generate so much rage, keeping berserk uptime and rage vortex uptime, and on top of that being like max rage. It's very, very, very likely. Then it's just the usual stuff. Totems with Maim. I actually forgot to put Leap Slam in here. Let me do this real quick. Put a Leap Slam in there. You probably do faster attacks. You might need to link this to Life Tap or something. I doubt it though. I'm also using a level 1 Clarity here. This is just because we're using the +1 to all maximum LE res if we have both life and mana reserved. This might not even be worth it, honestly, but I just have it here just in case. Other than that, you're going to put Berserk on left click or Enduring Cry on left click. This will generate you endurance charges for free and give you a little bit of regen to counteract the massive, admittedly, massive degen right here from Rite of Ruin. Lose 0.1% of your life per rage per second while you're not losing rage. Actually, wait, while you're not losing rage. Doesn't Berserk lose rage? Doesn't it say? Lose 5 rage per second. Never mind. What degen? There is no degen. This build doesn't have any degen. So, like I said, you will probably be... I say probably because I don't know with it. Everything revolves around the new Cleave gem. This is why this build is going to even exist. But I can almost guarantee, trust me, I've played a lot of melee Path of Exile. I can almost guarantee you will be sustaining Berserk and near maximum rage all the time. So you really shouldn't be ever losing health due to Rite of Ruin, because you're going to be losing rage due to Berserk. It's that simple. You're going to get all the benefits from rage and none of the downside. But should you be degenning or something, you do take this leech wheel here and you get 10% of your leeches instant. I would still probably grab this even if you weren't degenning here. So like the 0.1 per second, that doesn't matter. I would still probably grab this leech wheel. It's that good. The 10% instant leech is fantastic. Other than that, if you want leveling tips, I have a skill tree here. Here's a tree that I would use for leveling. You're going to use Sunder with a 2-handed axe, Fist of War, Melee Fizz, Close Combat. Just use any 2-handed axe you find. This is like roughly the leveling tree. It's all in here if you want to check it out. And then for late game upgrades, you could probably swap to a Paradoxica and a Psychotic Axe. You could probably spec this build into crit. I don't really think it needs to do that. So if you just get one Watcher's Eye with Impale last 2 additional, that is a massive damage upgrade. So if you want to try and spec this in the crit, you can do whatever you want. I think this as a baseline will work very well. Also, we are sustaining frenzy charges. I forgot to mention this. We're using the 8% chance to gain a frenzy charge when you hit. We're hitting a metric butt ton. At least right now we're at 11 attacks per second. That's quite a bit of attacks per second. I think you'll have your frenzy charges up all the time when you're fighting a boss. You just saw a cut right here for a very good reason, because I totally forgot to mention the new Ascendancy class here. I think the Warden is going to be the best for this build. Number one, because of this node right here. So your tincture, there's going to be tons of different tinctures. We haven't seen anywhere close to all of them, but the main tincture that I think is going to be powerful for at least like League Start scenario would be Fortify. So one of the tinctures just straight up is going to give you Fortify on hit. And I have right here, there's the tincture in there. And more importantly is that any flasks adjacent to that tincture get charges when you hit and have increased effectiveness, which increases the mods that are on them. So by this thing says 35 increased duration, that 35% is going to be increased by another 30% because of how that Ascendancy node is worded, which means you should have permanent uptime on whichever 2 flasks are adjacent to your tincture, which is very, very powerful. So I think the Granite and the Silver Flask are no-brainers. You probably want to put those adjacent. You also have the tincture have increased effect per empty flask slot. So for now, I have this slot empty because you might use a different tincture, or maybe you get like one with Fortify and a different mod on top of that. We have no idea. I don't know what the different tinctures are going to be. But if this node turns out to be useless, meaning the only tincture you want to use is Fortify, because I really do think the Fortify one's going to be the most powerful because it saves you all these passive points, or using the Fortify support gem. So I think the Fortify tincture is by far the most powerful. So if that's the case, you can spec into Lessons of the Seasons, which gives you some ailment and immunity, which I don't think it's that powerful. So Detect Evil, maybe. I mean, and there's not really a good last choice here. Maybe the Oath of the Magi. You probably not Magi. You'll probably need all of your sockets, so I wouldn't take that. This Ascendancy looks powerful basically only because of this node. Straight up, like this node seems very, very, very powerful. As the league goes on and you farm some money, or if you're playing solo self-found, you farm some of the relics for this Ascendancy, which most people are probably going to go. It's called the Primalist, I think, right? Something like that. This guy who you can socket in additional Ascendancy classes, that might be pretty dang good. But for the most part, I would just take this Ascendancy because of the Nature's Concoction node. Should be incredibly powerful. But with that, I was a little long-winded. I apologize. Probably could explain this a little more concise. That's about it for the build. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Again, I've played a ton of Melee. Haven't played this exact build. Obviously, no one has. New Cleave. But if you have any questions, I can probably help you out. And thanks for watching.